Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. I'm very sorry, I don't speak French. I'm German, I speak Italian, I speak Spanish and English, so you have to bear with me speaking English today. Welcome to my little talk about privileged access management and what went wrong in the last 2 decades. You just saw the quick video of the old old telephony systems where the ladies and gentlemen were actually connecting you and patching you through. I am actually that old. I actually started my career in 1990 something with Siemens and selling private branch extensions and then pivoting into IT security, mainly talking about like RSA tokens, smart cards and stuff like that. Privileged access management wasn't so much of a topic then because nobody talked about normal access management back then either. Yes, we had two-factor authentication with RSA tokens and of course with smart cards, but I still remember that I was one of the first 100 people at the Siemens Corporation getting one of those multifunctional PKI-enabled smart cards, which was supposed to enable us sending encrypted email. And I considered myself a techie back then, and I struggled like 2 or 3 days to actually set that up and make that work. So just a show of hands. Who has recently, like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, sent or received an S-MIME encrypted email? Okay, one. Well, how many of you have received one in the last 6 months? A few more. And within the last 12 months. Well, so like 99% of all the email traffic is going unencrypted. And why is that? Why don't we use encrypted email more? Quite frankly, and pardon my French here for my clear German speaking, the usability sucks. It's underwhelming. It's absolutely brutal. Even the most professional IT security guys and ladies refrain from using encrypted email because it's just too complicated. And quite frankly, we've seen the same thing appear in the area of privileged access management. Much of the idea is just like the previous presenter, which I really enjoyed listening to the presentation, it's just about the login, right? We just need to have some simple way of managing our credentials so we can get our access granted and everything will be good and fine. Unfortunately, especially for those of you who have dealt with privileged access like anything for root accounts, for AD admin, for device admin accounts, for SAP admin accounts, we know that the vendors and the projects that we all had to suffer through in the last 1.5 decades with vaulting passwords somewhere and then making us jump through hoops of burning fire to just get our credentials made our lives miserable. So quite frankly, it feels like somebody took all of the credentials from us for all the privileged accounts and put them in a vault, and then they put the vault somewhere in the dark basement. And whenever you had to get access to that SAP server, to that Unix server, to that Exchange backend or to the AD, somebody had to go down the dark stairs, go to the vault, grab the credentials, and then multi-factor authentication, and then whatnot. It's really complicated. It's really a nuisance to do that, and it actually is detrimental to the efficiency of the administrative workforce. And I don't know how that works in your company, but I, as a managing director, have a hard time finding skilled IT admins who want to work with me, not because I'm such a bad employer, but, well, I actually pay attention to security. And of course, they ask me, what do you have in place? I actually had a customer who due to compliance reasons, was about to embark on their journey to implement a privileged access management system. And so they did such a meetup like this, and they said, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to install a privileged access management system here because we have compliance needs. The authorities ask us to provide proof. And the head of development got up and said, okay, if you implement this and that system here, I'm going to leave, I'll just quit, and I'll take most of my IT developers with me. And that is really the reality. I had another customer, an energy company, and they had a new CIO, and he said, okay, we need to implement security in a more strict way. So who of you guys knows the CIS benchmark, the CIS? Well, a few of them. Well, that's a guideline. It's not like you download it and then you execute it to the point. But they did. And one of the things that was pointed out is no standing privileges for anyone on the client. Guess who has admin privileges on the client all the time? The developers. So overnight, these 200, 250 developers were taking away the right to administer and install software on their own development workstations. They were separated. They were in a separate network segment, really well protected. They took away their admin rights, and well, you can imagine the loud screaming that was audible from the mainland. Most of the developers sat in the UK, because there was no easy way to grant those people back their entitlements, their admin privileges on demand. And this is, again, something where I feel we really have a history of really bad user experience when it comes to privileged access management, because, well, of course, nobody should have standing privileges on their own desktop, unless maybe they are in a development environment. But of course, if you take away those admin rights, those standing privileges, you should at least have a more or less easy and quick way to request back and be granted back those privileges for a short amount of time. And the reality is that most of the stuff that we've seen in the last 10 years actually implemented something like that. Okay, you need to go to the other side. Oh well, either you swim through the crocodile-infested river, or you take a shot at that rope and try to swing across in some other way. So that is really a bad user experience, and unfortunately, that is also combined with a lot of complex routines. Most privileged access management projects I have seen revolve around the idea of we need to discover all the passwords. So far, so good. We need to vault them all. Just put them into that vault, put the vault into the cellar, and then make people change the way they work. And whenever they need to log in with a privileged account, they first have to connect to the privileged access management solution, some kind of web portal, whatever, log in, do multi-factor authentication, look for the target system they want to access, find the credential or find the account they want to use, extract the credential, use that to log in, open an SSH session, open an HTTPS session, or open some sort of RDP session where the credentials are then used. This is just annoying. It adds so much complexity and breaks the workflow of people. Who of you has admins or uses themselves Ansible, for example? Ansible? Any kind of Terraform, maybe? Some automation solutions. And if you suddenly make your admins that mainly work on Linux, Unix systems, get the credentials for each of those target systems individually and individually run their scripts, that is sort of breaking their routine. A good admin is a lazy admin, because whenever he does things the third time, he starts to automate it. He writes a script and maybe puts them in Terraform, puts them in Ansible, and tries to reduce his workload by simply executing that script. A good privileged access management solution would take that into account and make sure that we are not put the admins into those complex routines and make them access such a portal first to grab the different credentials one by one. The next one is that uncertain critical path. They sometimes even don't know how to protect the credentials. They don't even know where to put them or where to get them. Let's move away from the typical username password schemes. Who of you has SSH in use, secure shell? Okay. Who of you has moved to SSH keys and doesn't use login anymore? Okay, I would say the majority of it. Very good. So what have we achieved? Well, we at least have put away the normal credentials, but we have exchanged the login problem with a username and password to a key management problem, right? So if one of your admins leaves, you still have, well, you should get those SSH keys from all the target systems that this guy or this lady had access to, right? So we just shifted the problem from deleting a user at a certain endpoint that uses SSHs to deleting the public key of that user at that endpoint. But those keys are the first step. Who of you is using any kind of containerization, Kubernetes, Docker containers? Okay, a few already. So what's the difference between those containers and a typical VM? The VM, you instate, and it usually runs for days, weeks, months, probably years, because for us, virtualization of a server was just getting rid of the direct one-to-one relationship between the operating system and the hardware. Now, with our container approach, we're packaging much more into these containers. And what should we use those containers for? Well, react to the demand. We just spin up more containers, similar to the ones already in place, so we can have this scalability to make these IT systems more flexible, to be able to serve more demand or less demand, and just spin those containers down when the demand goes down. So if you have containers that only live for a few hours, maybe minutes, maybe even only seconds, does it make sense to use the same old school provisioning, the same old school lifecycle management that you would use for managing an account, an admin account for a VM? I don't think so. And I hope you heard of that term ephemeral. Most of these containers are now going into a very, very ephemeral way. They will only exist for a very short time. So we are shifting away from the traditional access to a resource based on an admin account and a protected admin credential towards a token-based environment. And that's going to change the paradigm how we need to access these critical resources. The paths will be different. We are moving away from those standard personal or non-personal accounts to those token-based accounts. So privileged access management also has to evolve from just vaulting the admin accounts and their credentials into some kind of basement system. We will need to address that. We will have a bigger amount, a larger amount of ephemeral credentials with tokens that need to be managed with the same security and the same mechanisms that we had before. And that's just going to not work very well with a standard approach of vaulting your passwords. So that has led us to a situation where we actually have a big roadblock. I have another customer who recently tried to implement one of the, let's say, Gartner top right corner PAM solutions. We all know who I'm talking about, I assume. and it took them more than a year to get the basic use cases installed and up and running. And then they really had the issue that they were requesting the admins to use MFA all the time. With every logon they did, they would have to take out their RSA token and do MFA again. That's just not feasible. That is just working into a direction where we are seeing such a roadblock and it's not really working well. So how did we get there? Well, quite frankly, when this solution was invented, it was a vault. It was a vault for enterprise secrets, and only after 1 or 2 years with some successful customers, they asked them, oh, by the way, what kind of secrets do you put into that vault? And they all said, yeah, passwords and credentials. And so the vaulted PAM as a product more or less was born. This is not a eureka moment, that was more or less a, oh, that's odd moment. And now for the last 2 decades, we've been forced to use that approach. Unfortunately, the world has changed quite a lot. We not only have human identities, we also have machine identities, non-human identities. And we not only work with our on-premise environment, but we also have to take care of cloud environments, multi-cloud environments. We also have to work with containers. And the next big thing, and I've seen that at booths all around this venue today too, AI. AI agents, agentic AI is all the rage. We have so many different access pathways that we need to cover. And the last count we did was like above 1,600 different access management solutions of more than 100 vendors that we need to take care of. And that is really far too much. If we want to bring that onto a vaulted solution one by one, well, I'll be talking about the same topic in 10 years from now. So yesterday we had admins and servers. Maybe a few hundred identities of our administrative personnel doing a low number of thousands of authorization requests. Today, we are already at thousands of identities because we have to include machine-to-machine and service-to-service communication, which has privileges. And we are facing millions of authorization requests. And with the extended growth of non-human identities and stuff like that, we will have millions of identities to manage with billions of authorization requests to handle. If we want to cover that with an old school privileged access management solution, that's probably not gonna work very well. So the approach that we would need to better cope with that situation is definitely that we need some sort of universal authorization at privileged access management, something that is actually able to give us better visibility of what systems, what NHI, what machines, what personalized admin accounts I have in my environment, give me more control about who accesses what, when, and why, and especially with the agentic AI approaches that we're seeing right now, it's not sufficient anymore to give my agent the privileges that I had, because that agent will execute these and use these and abuse these credentials and their privileges at machine time, at machine speed. So I cannot really make sure that this agent is not misbehaving and abusing the privileges. So it's really about adding another layer of governance that enables me to reduce the attack surface and make sure that we not only cover our old school on-premise environments, but also the millions of AI and container instances and our cloud environments. And what the concept behind that is more or less a multi-layered firewall for privileged access that does not define a static rule set. You can access that Unix server, you can access that Windows AD, you can manage the AD environment on the clients in there. No, it needs to be a lot more flexible. It needs to be a lot more adjustable to our needs. So on the first layer, we would ask, can we trust the identity? Who is accessing the resource that is in question? So we're talking about identity providers. We're talking about strong authentication. The next layer then would be the device, the environment context. You've probably heard about that. It's context-based access control, why the former would be more or less a role-based access control. Then the next part is, can I get additional information about it? What's the time of date? What is the IP geolocation? What is the environment that the request comes from? And finally, pressed the wrong button here. Give me a second here. So, and finally, can we trust the action? Who of you has talked to someone about the agentic AI and intent-based access? Was that mentioned somewhere? Because the current discussion around the agentic AI is much about what is the idea, what does the agent want, what does the user that let that agent loose want, what was the intent of that person. That is this final layer here in this multi-layered approach. Is the action okay? Can I really have that access? Do I evaluate it? Who of you had exposure with FGA, with fine granular authorization? Is that something you heard about? Because most of the time, when we log into an IDP, into your Entra AD, into your ADFS server or anything else, or your Okta, it's more or less a yes-no decision. Can I access this resource? Yes, no. Usually, we do not combine a fine granular authorization with that. What can the user do? What can the agent do? So that's fine granular authorization. It's a really, really hot topic out there, and I'm pretty sure there's like a handful of vendors out there who do that and improve the granularity of that access. So what do we need to do? It's really, really time to clean up. I think I drove home the point that the current situation is actually awkward. Yes, we need more security. Yes, all the governing institutes, all the resources that we have under management need to be well protected. But on the one hand, we have administrators who are really annoyed by us making them jump through burning hoops of fire, while on the other side, we have regulators who want a really, really well-defined architecture and want to see logs where we can show that we tightly manage access, and especially privileged access. So, if you are embarking on the trip to create a privileged access management project inside your organization, I can only recommend to you that you really, really ask yourselves internally, do we really need to create a vault? Is that really needed? And even if you have a vault, ask yourself, do I need it in the future, or do I need a vault that is based on those typical username, password, credentials, or should I move to a vault that is more addressing the ephemeral needs for tokens instead of credentials? The second, no credential exposure. For me, a privileged access management solution where you actually log into a portal, look for the target system that you want to administer, look for the account that you have to use, and then have the password shown to the admin so he can read it and type it. That's just not what we should do in 2026. We are beyond that. By the way, who of you uses passwordless mechanisms already? A few. So Passkeys, anyone? Windows Hello for Business? A few, okay. You are on the right track. It's 2026. I know that the identity management industry has proclaimed the death of the password for multiple years, but we are finally there. With Windows Hello for Business, with passkeys, with FIDO2, we are there. The technology is available and it's not version 1.0 anymore. We are far beyond that point. So please, 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 whenever possible, try to evade creating passwords. Create passkeys, use FIDO2 authentication. And then, if you come to the selection process, ask the vendor, ask your system integrator, how long did the last 3 projects that you had last? How much time did you use to install the central components? How long did it take you to onboard the 5 most critical infrastructure components? How long did it take you to implement database access? How long did it take you to integrate the Google Cloud, AWS, sponsoring this stage, and maybe Azure? How long did that take that? And if they say, that took us like 13 months, 15 months, 18 months, that's not what you should embark on. It's possible. You can implement privileged access management solutions that are actually working on a multiple target environment frame within weeks. And I'm just want to reference back to a similar event we had in Frankfurt last November. We had a banking guy who had really, really big pressure from the internal audit because they failed to protect the database access and cloud access with the chosen solution. They had spent half a year really trying hard to implement that. And we were able to showcase the implementation before Christmas. And on January 29th, I actually got the signature for the new solution. So it's possible to implement that within a few weeks. And again, if you are embarking on the journey, ask if you are able to cover your Kubernetes, your containerization, your cloud, your databases. Ask how does the user interface look like? And the best privileged access management solutions out there actually ask how do your admins work right now? And then try to mimic that behavior. Instead of having the admin log into some kind of portal, extract the credential, and then use it, they should use whatever royalty S for their RDP access and integrate that so that the PAM solution actually injects the credentials on use. So the idea definitely is to reduce the standing privileges. I know that Gartner and some other analysts preach 0 standing privilege. Most organizations are far from the organizational maturity to go that way, but let's say reduce step by step the standing privilege, then we are on the good track. Of course, you should also look at adding the capability to protect outliers, like let's say Windows shares. I'm pretty sure that none of you is able right now to protect their Windows SMB shares with multi-factor authentication. Yes, that can be done. We are speaking of technology of the 21st century. Then, of course, integrate your solution with IGA, with identity governance and administration tools. And that brings me to the end of my talk. And I just want to encourage you to ask questions. You will find me at the Kuppinger Kohl booth later on, hanging out with my friends there. Else, I'm here to answer your questions, and thanks for your time.